Moving on to the almost infamous climate gate, as media so often likes to call it. The skeptics, the climate change skeptics, have used this incident as evidence for their claims. They basically went, well, look at this, you know, we're basically right. What would you say to the skeptics in the light of this climate gate scandal now?
Well, there's no question that some bad stuff came out in those emails, and I don't condone some of the things which people said, and certainly the attempt to suppress or delete material subject to freedom of information requests, that is just plain wrong, and in fact would very likely have been a criminal offence if it weren't for the limited period in which it could be prosecuted. So I don't condone any of that, and it needs to be condemned in fierce terms, because climate science must be above repute. But in order to demonstrate that there's a systemic problem with the climate science, and that the whole thing is a con, as many people in the media maintain, you would have to show that there are similar problems with some tens of thousands of scientific papers, and that many thousands of climate scientists are involved in a vast global conspiracy to defraud us. Quite what the point of that conspiracy would be is hard to see, but that's what you would have to show. And of course, as they're manifestly incapable of showing that, they just sling as much mud as they possibly can.
What do you then think is needed to bring these two completely opposing camps together?
Well, we're not going to. I mean, the people who say that climate change isn't happening have an unshakable religious belief that it's not happening, because they don't want it to be happening, and they don't want to make any of the changes which are necessary. And those of us who have a scientific belief, in other words, one informed by the science, we can't reach them because they don't want to be reached. So we just have to mobilise with the resources we've already got, and hope that eventually they give up, because they can't sustain a position of sheer idiocy for too long.
What do you think is the media's role in all of this? I mean, do you think that media's coverage of the debate and the issues surrounding climate change has been fair, appropriate?
Yeah, it's been terrible. It's been absolutely terrible. And you know, I mean, I'm a journalist myself. I understand the instinct to want to whip up a good story, but a good story ought to be a true story, and there's been an awful lot of nonsense recently.
Is there a way to improve that? Oh, a lot of journalists aren't scientists, so they are probably as confused as, you know, normal people. Is there a way to close that gap?
Yes, there might be a way to close it, but the trouble is, as you say, a lot of journalists aren't scientists. A lot of journalists know absolutely nothing about science, but still believe that they are God's gift to human wisdom, and that they know everything there is to be known, and they needn't know any more than they already do. Partly what we're seeing is the revenge of the humanities students, but also we're just seeing the sheer pig-headed bloody-mindedness of British journalism. I've seen plenty of that in my time.
And finally, what do you want to see happen next about climate change?
Well, we have to revitalise the international treaty-making process, and that means we have to get rid of the current one, which is plainly not working. It hasn't been working at all. It wasn't working at Kyoto, it certainly didn't work at Copenhagen, and yet these idiot governments are still pursuing the same treaty-making process as they were before. They're just continuing to bang their heads against the same brick wall, even though it's become manifestly obvious to anyone who can see that that wall is not going to yield. That if you've got a process whereby everybody tries to shed as much responsibility as possible, where they try to get rid of their obligations and make other people carry those obligations, it's never going to work. We need a system which is taken outside the hands of the nation states, a truly global system rather than an international system, which they can't jigger up in the way that they've been doing. And there are a couple of good proposals around. James Hansen's idea of fee and dividend, and the cap and trade proposal, the very sophisticated one put forward by Oliver Tickell in his book Kyoto 2. Now those have the potential to break that deadlock, but at the same time we need the power of a good example, and that's where Wales comes in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.